Hi, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of The Lowdown by Analysis.tech. Today's going to be super fun because, as I've mentioned in the past, sometimes we're working and sometimes we're having play dates and sometimes we get to do both. And so one of the things that we really enjoy about this podcast is we get to reunite with old friends. And today we've got a particularly wonderful old friend, Mike Gilpin from Forrester, where we all work together, and Gartner, where we didn't work together, but it's great to have Mike here today. We're really excited because he's actually been doing some really good research around the area of AI development, which is obviously where the podcast has been pretty much focused for the last year. So here with my usual, often partner in crime, John Rymer. How are you, John?
Very good. Echoing your excitement about Mike joining us on the podcast, Rob. Mike was my boss for many years at first Giga and then Forrester. And Mike, you remember that when I left Giga, you took my job, and then we ended up working together with you being my boss. How weird was that?
That was weird. I was disappointed when I got to Giga and you weren't there. I was like, where's John? So it was a delight to be able to hire you back some years later and get to work together. And you were one of the superstar analysts at Forrester in general and on my team. So it was an honor to be the manager of a team that had you on it. So thank you.
Well, thank you for that. We had a really good team. Mike, you were a great boss. Mike just would say, go figure things out and get out of our way. So
tell me what I can do to help. Yeah, right.
Exactly. So Mike, it's a real pleasure to be with you here today. And thanks for coming on. I saw that you had retired from Gartner and then you began to make some really interesting posts on LinkedIn about the new research you're doing for a book. And I reposted some of them. I replied to some of them. So you're developing some really good insights, and we want to talk about those today, and we're very grateful that you can join us. The research, I think the term would be the AI development paradox. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, folks. But Mike, before we get started on the content, we always ask our guests to tell us about their journey. And you go way back, my friend, into software development and product development. So anyway, help the audience understand your journey, and then tell us something about yourself that a lot of people don't know, just to make it fun.
Sure. So I started programming in high school, and the math teacher said, hey, there's this terminal over here connected to a mainframe in Austin. We were in Houston. Do you want to try learning how to use it? And I was the only person in the entire school who said yes. So there was one person, it was me. But then that stood me in good stead when I got to Rice and was working on a degree in physics. There was a lot of opportunity to use computer systems there. I learned several different languages. One of my favorites in the early days was Algol, because we had a Burroughs B5500 mainframe, which when it went down, it would write PLOP across the paper of the teletype terminal, plop. When it went down, that was amusing. So then when I graduated, I couldn't find a job in physics. I tried, but it was 75. It was kind of the middle of the recession. And so I got a job as a developer. And after that, I was in love with software development, and I stayed in that really my whole career one way or another. So I moved through several different companies in enterprise IT as a developer, systems analyst, leading development groups. And I transitioned in the mid 80s into a consulting organization named LBMS, which subsequently became where I got my first opportunity to build software products. And we built the first Windows-based case tool. Remember case tools back in the day? So we had a great relationship with PowerSoft. So Dave Litwack and I put that together. And we were the first case tool that you could generate a Power Builder application from. And that really drove a lot of our revenue. And we were very happy with that relationship and how that worked. We had another one with Cullinane. That's how I met Carl Olofsson, Cullinet later. And so that you could also generate applications in one of their platforms. And so really, I've been kind of living the low-code life in a way many decades ago. Like I remember building a system for Coca-Cola on Ads Online from Cullinet. And so, that was showing the leverage of a more platform-based kind of solution like that. And so then kept in product management, software engineering, leading product development, all in that software development business domain on through the 90s at Intersolve, and then joined Giga. You know me from Giga and Forrester. And then I left. I went to a couple of different vendor shops. In one, I was kind of in charge of engineering and product management. In another one, I was the CTO, and it was a digital agency, and we were doing some really interesting work with big clients on Wall Street. And then I went to Gartner. I was there for 10 years and then retired. So I've decided to name my Substack, by the way, which I haven't launched yet, but I'll be launching sometime within the coming week. All Sides, because I've been on all sides of the table, right? I'm not sure if it's 4 sides, 6 sides, however many sides there are. I've been on every single one of them as a consultant, as a creator of software, as an enterprise IT guy, as an analyst, et cetera. And they're all wonderful. I've got passion for the topic of creating software.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Rob.
Hey, Mike, there's a concept that you're onto that we are pretty excited about, and we'd love the audience to hear more about it. Tell us about this concept of the AI development paradox, where it came from and how you came upon it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was first alerted to its existence, frankly, when I was at Gartner. So I was interested in pursuing this area of research after I retired. And so I started doing my own interviewing. And every single person I interviewed said, yep, it's definitely a thing, which is when AI increases your capacity to create new software a lot, like depending on who you're talking to, is it 50% more productivity for just the coding portion? By the way, it's not the overall life cycle, which that when you take 50% faster on coding, it comes down to what, 15, 20% overall. But some people are seeing more. Like I remember hearing some people saying like 100% or more. Then the other parts of the life cycle start to break. And the paradox is that people were not seeing the value that they were expecting to get. And the CFO was coming after them saying, you spent $3 billion on this AI thing. Where's the value? And they couldn't show it. And it was because they were really not optimizing all those other parts of the life cycle. And there are two aspects of that. One is you're familiar with the theory of constraints, right? So one piece goes faster, other parts break. Whether it's testing, whether it's a code review, all these different things that are downstream, obviously those get overloaded. You don't have enough humans to do human code review, so you need AI code review. And there's a lot of innovation going on in that aspect of things and applying that theory of constraints. But where the bigger impact is in deciding what to build. And that's upstream. And there are many pieces that are upstream. There's discovery, there's design, but because of my background in product management, and really even before I got into product management, work that I did understanding the business side of what we were building, like at Coca-Cola, it impressed upon me that the big impact comes from deciding what to build. Because, what's the cheapest way to discover that you built the wrong feature? Don't build it.
Yeah.
Right? Just avoid it completely and you haven't spent any of that money. So keeping the super fast engine of software engineering, now AI empowered, pointed at the right thing is really where the big impact comes from resolving this AI software paradox.
Great. John.
Yeah.
So help us understand that, Mike. The deciding. In fact, one of the posts that you put up that I just loved was code generation, code development is now commodity. It's free. It's cheap. It's free. It's really cheap.
Yep.
What's really important is deciding. What puzzles me about that is there are requirements processes. There are in the low code space. There are there are folks that will allow business people to come forward with ideas and maybe even build prototypes. So it seems like there's something amiss because there are structures in place and protocols in place to help decide on doing the right thing, but that AI has somehow broken them. Can you help us understand that a little better?
Well, I think you're right in saying that there is innovation going on in the front end of the life cycle. And I remember sitting around a table at breakfast with some folks from one large auto manufacturer, and they were saying, yeah, they were using AI to help with creating user stories. And it's all kind of chipping around the edges, though, not really transforming the way product management gets done. And it's this more fundamental transformation of who does it, where they do it, how they do it. That is where the bigger impact comes from. Because if you think of the scale of the amount of work that these AI empowered software engineering groups can do, especially when they have platforms that are enabling them not only AI, but low code or other platforms that are giving them tremendous leverage. Should a product manager vibe code a production system and just throw it over the wall? Yeah, probably not. I've seen some definite, legitimate criticism of that idea. But can the prototype that a product manager creates be a really rich expression of intent, which then enables an engineering team to more quickly deliver the production system? Absolutely. And so that is just one piece of the overall view of who are these people, these deciders. I think the big challenge for product management in the enterprise is it's not like being an ISV. And of course, the whole project to product move, it's been going on. It was going on when I was at Forrester. We were writing about it then. And certainly my team at Gartner also wrote about that. But it hasn't really mapped effectively into the enterprise context. The way it gets done in ISVs, they have 85% gross margins in their business. They can afford lots of high paid product managers sitting around cogitating about what to build next. In the enterprise, you just can't fund that model. So you need a different kind of operating model that's really going to move these decisions as close to the coalface as you can possibly get them. And can an engineer be a decider? Absolutely. That's one of various sources that we see where the people come from who naturally gravitate to this kind of work.
Great. Thank you, Rob.
So, folks, as always, thank you so much for tuning into the Lowdown by Analysis.Tech. If you'd like to share all of the great content that we're presenting here with like-minded folks, hit the like button, hit the share button. We'd surely appreciate it. If you'd like to interact more with the folks at Analysis.Tech, with John Rymer, with myself, with Rick Greenwald on the topic of data, or Andy Bartels, our chief economist, Dave Marcus, great experience in product as well as channels, and Francis Carden, serial entrepreneur and the godfather of RPA. Please reach out, hit us at analysis.tech. It's that simple. Hey, Mike. So I've been using the same RACI chart for like 15 years, and all of a sudden you've thrown a new role in here. You just mentioned it. The role of the decider. Dive into that a little bit. What is the decider? And more importantly, what are the skills that we're looking for that the decider will have or have to build?
Yeah. The decider really is the person who has, foremost among the other members of the team, the product mindset. And frankly, the more people on a team creating software using a product centric model who have a product mindset, the better, right? They're more oriented toward solving the business problem than they are toward some cool algorithm that they figured out how to use. But, what is the product mindset? Well, really, first and foremost, it is this balance of business and technology perspective that you understand both and you're able to integrate them continuously in your brain and as you work. A second domain is really curiosity about the business, which is where that comes from, which is I really want to know how this business works and how do they make money and how can I help them make more money, more money, if you remember that TV series. And then, frankly, deciders, they're not shy. They are bold, clear communicators. And, I've been around long enough to know that software engineers can be that person. I was one. I started as a programmer, and you can tell I'm not shy. But nonetheless, a hiring tip, if you're looking for someone who has this skill set and you're looking at resumes, if they mention that they were in drama club in high school or college, that is often a strong indicator. It's not the only one, though. Like, I also remember once hiring somebody, a woman who had been the coxswain for crew in rowing in college, and she also had that same bold quality. So it doesn't only come from drama. We also want them to have a CEO mindset. And I took this from the language of people I was interviewing, but I'd also heard it before. But I think the people who I was interviewing most recently who were using this term, they meant really, it's almost like you've got a P&L in your head. You're always thinking about, is this really going to benefit the business? In what way is it going to drive value? You've also got to have credibility with stakeholders, both in the business and on the team. And sometimes the best way to find out who the candidates are to play this role is go to the engineers and say, when you have a difficult question about the business, who do you ask?
Mm.
And it may be a person in the business or it may be, somebody else, but nonetheless, they know who the people are that they already trust to play this role. And then finally, of course, in today's world, you've got to have fluency with AI. You've got to already understand how to use all the tools. I make extensive use of Claude, but there are others that are also great. And already have that built into your work process because, as you pointed out, John, there has been a lot of innovation already in how product management gets done using these tools or prototyping or business people building software.
And
So, John, tell us your joke about the extroverted developer and then bring us into our next topic. I know you too well.
you do. It
That-
came right into my head. So, Mike, how can you tell? How can you tell an extroverted software engineer from an introverted one?
They're looking at your shoes instead of their shoes.
See,
I've heard you tell this joke before. Sorry, John.
Well, this
It sounds like we go back like all 30 years together or something.
We go back a long way.
It also works for Home Depot associates. I'll add that.
There you go. Yeah. I always want the Home Depot associate that has the longest tail, and it's like the number of people that are following them around. And they'll usually have like 3 people, and you get in. Okay, now I'm the 4th person that's going to ask this person a question after the other 3 get taken care of. But
Or
they're
just
the
go
ones who have
local
the most
hardware store
knowledge.
guys. They always go local hardware store. But
Anyway,
we've really
Mike-
diverged now.
So, Mike, I assume when you say you understand the AI tools and understand AI, part of that is knowing when AI is not a good approach, as well as when it might actually be helpful, right?
Yeah, and not to think that all AI is Gen AI, LLMs. There's a lot of great AI technology around in the discriminatory kind of model that gets used in marketing for next best recommendation or in analytics for detecting fraud and so on, that we should keep on using that because it's the best tool for the purpose. But there are lots of other tools that AI doesn't necessarily. A great example of that is orchestration. Agents trying to orchestrate other agents sometimes goes horribly wrong when you have multi-agent orchestration. And the tools that have been good at orchestration for years, like RPA, for example, are great solutions still and the best choice for some of those use cases.
Yeah, agree. So the product, obviously, this product mindset is something that you're saying you really got to try to develop this in your people. If I'm just thinking, I'm someone listening to this podcast, and obviously, if I have a product mindset, that's going to help me in my career.
Mhm.
Where would you advise people to start? Should they go read texts about product management, even though they may be talking about ISVs? How do you advise people?
Totally. I love Marty Kagan's books. Inspired is on my shelf right over here. And Mick Kirsten has written some great stuff as well. So there's a lot of great advice about product management. You just have to understand that it'll need to be interpreted and implemented in an enterprise context in a somewhat different way, which is what I'll be also talking about in the book is exactly how to do that.
Thank you, Rob.
Right. So we've got the same jokes we've been telling for 30 years, and for 30 years or a lot longer, we've all been talking about fundamentally different relationship between IT and the business, one that's more mutually focused, one that's more mutually supportive. What does this relationship look like between IT and the business in this new world, Mike?
It's a very close partnership, and this is something that doesn't come easily or quickly. It requires mutual trust, and it takes a while to build up. I remember once visiting a lab in Atlanta where GE's energy people build the software for windmills. And they told me a funny story. It's a LEED 5 certified building, which was built specifically to be a development lab, but it was also located in the northern suburbs of Atlanta. And a lot of the business people with whom they worked lived further north and decided, I think I want to office in this building. And so that was kind of their initial motivation. They came there for a meeting, and then they started sitting at a cubicle near the developers, and then they went native. They just got sucked in. They loved building software for windmills, coming at it from a business perspective, and they were integrated in the team. And you'll run into anecdotes like that all over the place if you start to look for them, that business and technology people can be integrated together, sitting elbow to elbow on teams, getting stuff done. I almost said that other word. But nonetheless, the place that you can find people who have these capabilities, it's all over. It's in the business, it's in engineering, and it's also the people who are doing product management now. There are some places where even in the enterprise, there are people who carry that title of product manager or product owner. And if they have the skill set, they should be doing this work. The problem with the scaling, though, of the old model is you couldn't have a product manager on every team, but you need a decider on every team, whether that's a person who used to be called a product manager or some other person who has this product mindset. And, I've been on engineering teams where the most senior engineer on the team was the person with that mindset. And they would explain to me how the business worked. I did some work as a contractor at Exxon, and I went with them to an Exxon facility in Louisiana and learned how the piece of Exxon's business that we were going to be automating worked. And it was tremendously educational. Just like when at Coke, I got in trucks that were delivering Coke to Safeway or 7-Eleven and learned how that part of the business works so that we could build the software that would support that business. So this is really something that has existed as a potential for a long time. I think sometimes people get frozen by the scariness of, oh, how are we going to change to do this thing that people don't normally do? But people have been doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I've done it. I know it can be done. And so I think it's just a change that needs to happen in order to scale to handle, our team's going to be like 20 people. No, they're going to be, you've heard the term tiny team. I think they're going to be more small teams empowered by AI, building software. And so you can't have a product manager on every one, but you can have a decider.
I love the GE story. Great story. I love the fact that you go to Exxon as another story. We've had Shell on, we've had representatives from Exxon on in the past. These are highly regulated industries that cannot afford to make mistakes, and they are finding a path to do this. And they're finding a path to do this safely and hygienically. I love the stories when it happens in the most high risk, highly regulated environments. John.
Banking, they have lots of engineers. They're doing this work and they need this model.
Yeah.
Right. So, Mike, the last several years, 10 years at least, Agile has been the kind of the guiding light. Agile practices, Agile methods have been sort of the guiding light in software development organizations, particularly inside companies, not ISVs, but yet not as much in ISVs. But it sounds like Agile is kind of, some of it's going away, some of it's going to be replaced. What's the picture you see for folks that are really, they've been using Agile? What do they need to stop doing and what do they need to start doing?
And although I know a good bit about Agile and I've implemented it in organizations, I don't consider myself to be as much of an expert on Agile as some of the true experts that I've listened to on this topic. And I think I agree with them when they say, go back to what it says in the Agile Manifesto and think about those core principles, but that not every Agile practice that we have had introduced over the last 20 years is necessarily going to be relevant to today's circumstances. Some of those practices make sense if creating software is expensive and hard. If it's cheaper and faster, they don't make sense. Think about sprints, for example. If I can create a new software feature every day, do I need sprints that last 2 weeks? I think not. And I've run teams that were on a much faster cadence and use Kanban myself to manage the work of those teams. And I think that makes sense. On the other hand, if you look at all the work that's happening from agents, not everything that an agent does should show up on a Kanban, right? So the only things in the Kanban are going to be the things that are at the level of granularity and speed of moving across that humans care about. If I've got ServiceNow sending tickets to an AI, which is then doing a pull request on GitHub and pulling out my software and fixing the bug and pushing it into a staging area. Do I need to see that on my Kanban? Like it's there for 5 seconds. It's not useful. But nonetheless, I do think that the core principles of the Agile Manifesto still make sense today, but that they need adaptation for today's environment.
Right. That makes sense. Thank you.
Hey, you mentioned a few things during the course of the podcast. You mentioned a Substack you were starting up. You mentioned a book you're writing. Our audience is going to want to know about those things. They're going to want to follow you and learn all of the great things you're doing. How should our audience find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. And I think that for the moment is still the best way to find me. You'll find my posts there on, uh, uh, the paradox and the decider and so on. But also, I'll be announcing there the launching of the Substack and other things of that nature.
And when
Fantastic.
do you think? Well, when do you think the book will come out?
Unfortunately, it takes a while to produce a book. I'll be done writing by autumn, but it'll probably not actually launch until January. But that's my goal, is to have it
Great,
out there by January.
great. I can't wait to read it.
Thank you.
Mike, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to the audience again for tuning in. And we will be back in about a week with another great episode of The Lowdown.